But we are going to get started. So thank you all for coming.
Thomas, move it to the right.
This thing? Okay, sorry guys. I don't know, Max.
Go back.
Cool. Now I figured it out. So, hey everyone, my name's Sebastian. I am one of the co-presidents here of the Cybersecurity Club. Just a little background for who I am. I'm a junior. I'm majoring in CS with a minor in business, and I'm mostly interested in a lot of cloud computing, so AWS, other stuff like that. So if you ever want to talk about that, feel free to holler. And yeah, so this is, like I said, this is the second installment in our beginner lecture series for this fall. So we're going to be doing intro to SQL injections for our web part. So just to start us off, I have to do this for every workshop. So everything I say, ethical hacking. Not that I'm going to say most of the techniques we teach you here, unless they're like rookie web developers, probably not going to work. But it's still a good thing to know, and it's something you always have to consider when you're designing a website. So please do this for all good intentions, and this is purely for just more knowledge. So who out there actually knows what SQL is? So show of hands. Do you have experience with it? Who has like experience with it, has used it before? All right, so a good number. Personally, it's okay. No experience is needed. We'll teach you the very basics just so you can really understand what's going on here and we can get the most out of it. So someone who said they know what SQL is, you want to try explaining it? Just throw it out there. Wow, we got a lot of extroverts here.
The database?
Yeah, so SQL is a database, and we're going to be using the database language to access this. Databases are one of the best ways to, well, store data. Who would have thought? So it's really just the way that we as end users can access databases and get information from it. So for example, most websites that you go on, for example, if I log into Netflix and I need to look at my settings or I need to look at my personal information, that's all being pulled from their various databases. And there's many different languages of SQL, very different types. Specifically for this one, we'll be using MySQL, but there's plenty of others, Postgres, normal SQL, and there's even NoSQL, which isn't quite SQL, but we don't have to get into the technicalities of that. So just a quick run through of really what SQL is, right? So how's it set up? So what we're talking about is we have a database, right? And now we need to figure out a way to organize this data. So in SQL, that's done through something called tables. And SQL is essentially called relational databases for this reason. So if you direct your attention to the screens, as you can look on the left, we have this table and it's called persons, right? So in persons, we have each person has a unique identifier signified by the ID. They have a name, they have a surname, which is their last name for us English folks, and they have an age. And those are all datas corresponding. So if we go through a row, we can see that, for example, if we look at Jody Tucker, their ID is 1, their name is Jody, their last name is Tucker, and they're 34. That's what we call a row, and that all identifies one person. Those unique categories that we were talking about earlier, those are called columns, and those are all the attributes that we assign to each item. Going a little more into it, if you direct to the right, you can't really see it very much, but this sort of goes into why it's called relational databasing. So each of these tables can be linked to each other. So for example, if you look at some of them, an ID may link to somewhere else, or one of our fields could link to another table detailing more information. And really what we're going to show here through SQL injections is how we can manipulate the back end of our servers to extract this data that we really shouldn't be accessing normally. So just quickly going into some basic syntax. I know some of you said that you have some experience, but we're just going to really go through the basics here. And really, simple enough, it's kind of like Python. SQL is just English at the end of the day, and you can see it very similar. So we're going to have a few key phrases that you can see up here on the screen. First one being select. And select is really what we're going to be using whenever we want to get data from our table. So as you can see here, select A, comma B, so we're getting A or B from T. So we're selecting some data from a row or column from a certain table, and we're pulling that information, and that's what we'll get back. If you look on the second line, you can see star. And this is what's called the wildcard operator. And essentially what that means is it gets everything. It covers all possible processes. So if you went to you'll see that throughout in a wide variety of computer systems. So then Okay, so you're thinking, okay, I can get everything, I can get some specific thing. What if I want to get certain things? Maybe a conditional, like an if, like we do in other languages. So that's where the where keyword comes in. So as you can see, we get select A comma B from a certain table where some condition. So for example, I could say select movies in this category from the movies table where they are of the action genre, for example. And you'll kind of see that later when we get into the injection part. And there's a few more other key words that we'll get into. So you can see like order by, so that's a way to sort our return output that we'll be getting later. There's group by, so you can sort of group the rows that we're gonna be accessing later on, remembering going back to those rows and columns. And this is kind of really just the basics that we need. You'll see a few others later on, like union, that we can get into later. But for now, this is really just basically what we need. So going back to what I was saying, right? So the whole point of what really a SQL injection is that we're injecting our own SQL code into the database to get tables that we wouldn't necessarily have access to. So for example, let's say I had a database full of student information, right? And it's like People Finder, let's say for UMass. But if I'm logged in, I can maybe see some more information about me. And for whatever stupid reason, they're not parsing their data, and we can see that. So if you see the bottom line, essentially what we're going to do is we can use a few tactics to essentially break out of the normal SQL code that we're getting. So we'll get into it in a bit, but essentially we have fancy ways using comments and a few other things within the SQL language to break out of the normal inputs that we want. So for example, if I had select like a certain movie, or select movie from the movie table where the name is Iron Man, for example. So we would search Iron Man, that's what we're looking for in Netflix. We have special ways that we can, instead of breaking out of that, we can break out of that cookie cutter model where we're putting Iron Man into the where, and we can just write our own code and get whatever we want. We can access any table we want, and obviously that's really bad. We're going to be able to get to things we really shouldn't be able to. So next steps is we're going to go into VWAP. I know some of you weren't able to get it. A lot of you were. Perfectly fine if you want. I'm going to be doing everything up here, so feel free with all of that. VWAP just stands for an extra buggy web application. So essentially, it's really just like the reason you got a warning is because it is a terrible virtual machine. It has terrible vulnerabilities. Lots of security is just gone or missing. And that's really the whole point, is that it's sort of a play area. It's a sandbox for us to mess around and just learn some basic techniques. So I'm just going to bring that up now. I can see if I can learn this. Steven, I don't need help with math. I'm not going to lie. Oh, wait, no, I may have gotten it.
Is this too much? No, it's because you're in.
Yeah, just get good bits of that.
Where's the? I hate how they do it's not mirrored.
Yeah. So, like I was saying earlier, you may have your keyboard set to Belgium. Would recommend fixing that if you do want to type. Thankfully, I was able to set this up before. And yeah, so is anyone not in there or still in the processes, needs help?
Oh,
feel free to holler.
Does not work.
Don't full screen it. Yeah, it messes up the scaling. We'll get to that slide later. Yeah, it's no, auto reset is good. Scale mode.
Yeah.
And then make it. Did you hit the green, right?
No, because if you hit the green, it goes small for some reason.
Okay. So yeah, so once you get on, you can feel free to open a browser, and you should get to this screen, right? Where's my mouse? There it is. And going through this, here we go. So as you can see here, we can get some pretty basic credentials, right? So to log in, they give you basic credentials, and you're going to see B and bug is our password. So what we're going to do is we're simply just going to log in. Really secure here, hensing the point. And you can set the security level to low. That's perfectly fine. So you're going to get to this portal, and you're going to be logged in, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to this toolbar, and they have a lot of really great exercises here. If you do ever want to practice something, there's plenty of write-ups on them for online. But we're just going to go down here until we see SQL injection, and we're going to go here to get search. And then we can press that, and that should take us there. If it wants to. All right, so we get this little table here, right? And you can see search for a movie. So for example, I can do something like Iron Man, and I should get something coming up. So as you can see, one movie here is Iron Man. We get a title, we get a release date, maybe the main character, a genre, and a link to the IMDb, which is like a movie review. Don't know when they thought Iron Man. I thought it was pretty good, especially the original one. I felt like it fell off after. But really enough with Iron Man, but really what we're trying to show here is that we can really do a lot of interesting stuff here, figuring out whether we can even do a SQL injection. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to throw a 1 here and this. So after this kind of starts to break us out. So this little ampersand is going to be the starting of a comment. So what we're going to do here is then we're going to go OR. So that's another keyword. So it's kind of just like a binary operator conditional, similar to what you see in many other languages. And then we're going to do something that we just know is always true, right? So right now what we're doing is we're inserting this statement, right? So or 1 equals 1, well, that's always true, right? So it's going to be able to print a lot for us. So we're going to do this, and then you're going to see something a bit weird here. And what this simply is it's commenting, right? So when we're inserting this, right, there may be a bunch of SQL code after, right? So we want to make sure that that doesn't get rendered, and that maybe, you know.
Could you try again?
Thank you, Siri. I didn't ask. Oh no, now it's actually mad. Yeah, so we can run this, and it's still going in the back. So as you can see here, what this simply did is, as you can see, we got everything here, right? This was a way for us to.
I'm still not sure.
Thank you. So like I said, we did 1 equals 1, right? So that's always true. So what we ended up getting is we got every. Oh, now I'm down here. We got every single movie here that is stored in the database, whatever we want. And this is a little simple, but this is all we get. And what we can do now is we can kind of start to take this to the next step. So if we do something like this, so we have our 1, right? This is kind of what we said was breaking us out, right? So then we can start we can start trying to figure out the structure. This is kind of the next step. So we know that SQL works now, right? We were able to inject that code, and it didn't give us an error, it didn't throw anything. So we know it's working. And what we can do now is we need to figure out what is in the database. We need to know what attributes are there, what columns, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this 1, right? And then we're going to do order by, and this essentially is going to order it by the columns, right? So we're going to go, you can do the first column and the second column, and we're going to keep incrementing that until we can figure out the dimensions of our table. So if I do order by 1, you can see, oh, there's an error in our syntax, right? So if I went to 1 order by 2, order by 1 comma 2, you can see that that's also going to fail. So I kind of did this before, so I can tell you what we're going to get to. But eventually, we're going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, dash, dash, dash. And as you can see, we get back here, right? Unknown column 8 in order clause. So what this tells us is, okay, we reached the 8th column, and it wasn't able to identify anything. So now, what do we know? Anyone want to tell me? There's 7 columns. Doesn't take CS me to figure that out. So now we know there's 7 columns, but we kind of want to do more with that, right? So what this does show is we can start selecting from this and getting certain data, right? So we're going to do a little switch here. If I can get out of this. Yeah, sure. Command plus. There we go. And okay. Now I just have to get back there. There we go. Is that better to see, or just let me know? Does it need to be bigger? Yeah. The header is. What did I just do? I paused it because I Command P instead of Control plus. Is that better? Okay. So if you direct your attention up here, you can kind of see that what I was typing, right? You can see it's kind of been thrown up there in the URL, right? So what this shows us is we can really just take, instead of having to type over and over in this search bar where it gets deleted every time we refresh the page and submit our query, we can instead just start manipulating this up here, right? So as you can see here, we kind of have, localhost because we are running it locally here, this server. We have WAP, and then we have a little bit of SQL, PHP, and then this title equals. This is essentially where our SQL code is being inserted and being read by the server. So if we go here, and it lets me. Mac. Okay, it's not letting me paste. That's fine. I'll just hand type it. Sorry about this. I don't know why my copy paste isn't working. Probably because I'm not using a Mac keyboard on this VM, which is throwing it for a loop. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to be transferring what we would normally type in there, and you can start to see some new keywords here. And you can see union, and you can see we did select a bit, so I'm sure you know what that is. But union is essentially going to run all these selects over and over so we can get a lot more information all at once without having to worry. So essentially what we're doing is we're selecting from all these columns, and we're going to do it all at once. So, I did not do %20 there. That's an issue. Okay, just make sure I copy this. There we go. Okay, what did you not like? Because I forgot a N here in union. So, right. So, sorry about that, but now you can see here, right? So, sorry, I don't know why it zoomed out again. But, well, that's minus. So, as you can see here, it's quite peculiar. Before it was Iron Man, genre action, Tony Stark, but now I just get numbers, right? So what this is really showing us is really cool. So if you look at the title, it says 2. Well, what does that mean? Does anyone think they know? Based on what we were doing with the order by columns earlier? Yeah. Yeah, so we now know we've kind of taken these attributes and put them to a certain thing. So we know that the title is the second column, the release date is the third, the character is the fifth, and the genre is the fourth column. If you actually look at the IMDb, we can also see it. You kind of have to hover over it to look at the link. But if you see title and it says 6, so it's column 6. So what this really does is it shows that now, well, we have somewhere that we can extract this data. So SQL has a lot of really cool commands just in the data. Most languages have a way of just accessing things about the database, maybe what version it is or the name of the database. So if I go here to up here, if we go back up here into, for example, column 5, so this is the character, we're going to modify this. So instead of displaying 5, let's try a new command. Let's try, for example, something like database. So essentially database will just, give us the name of the database. And that can always be useful. So, of course, we're running on this thing, so the name of the database is WAP. There's a couple other useful ones and that you may see in the real world. So instead of running database here, what if we did something maybe a bit more useful, like, let's say I've been using generic SQL commands, and at this point, I didn't know where to go, and I may want to look up more commands that I think I could use to get what I need. So another useful one that we can do is version. So this will simply just print out the version of the SQL server that we're running. So we do this, we can see, okay, so it's running on Ubuntu. Sorry, not the SQL server, but the platform of the actual database. So you all download this, it's running on Ubuntu and Linux. So another thing now we can do is, there's a couple more ones. So remember before when I said from table name, right? So very common, I didn't really get into this because it is a bit more high level and I didn't want to dwell too long on introducing you to SQL, but we have these things called schemas. And that thing on the right that I told you showed you with all those relations between all the tables and all the rows and columns, that's simply a schema. It's kind of like the layout of your database and how everything links up together. So what we can do is instead of doing version here, let me zoom in again for y'all. I guess it doesn't zoom in up there. But essentially what we can do is we can do table name, and what we're going to do is we're going to start getting names of tables. So we can do that with our from command because it needs to pull from somewhere, right? So we're going to do from information schema dot tables. And like I was saying, this is kind of usually just a default name for that schema. It's kind of what when you're creating your own server, it'll come up with. So when we run this, you're going to see, oh, this is starting to look interesting, doesn't it? So as you can see here, you can start to see some pretty interesting stuff. We can see, oh, wow, we got character sets, nothing too, column privileges, maybe some admin rights there, routines, some of the schema privileges. Oh, I see tables. That's probably pretty important. Views, oh, wow, look at it. Ooh. And this is kind of, what you're looking for in a lot of these challenges and even in the real world. You see users table. And, think about all the vulnerabilities that has. Like if I was Netflix, right, and I was able to do this, I can get all the login information, credit card numbers, anything like that. So obviously it's saying we can go check that out really quick. So from here we can do, so what we're going to do is instead of information schema.tables, we're going to be doing the columns, right? So now that we have these columns, we know the table name because we just saw it. So we can do where table name, that conditional that I was talking about earlier. So you can see how this all kind of pieces together here. Where the table name is going to be equal to users. And we still have that comment at the end. And what we're going to do instead of, for example, so instead of this table name, instead what we're going to do is we're going to want the column names. So we can do column name. So now, as we can see where we put the column name, we can get a bunch of credentials, right? So we can see that the users table has a lot of really good information. We have IDs, so like going back before, we have a unique identifier for every person, so that can help us, for example, jump around tables. For example, if all of the user data wasn't in one table, we now have the unique identifier that would ID them across all tables, and it would make our search job, if we were going after one person, a whole lot easier. We have their login information, so we can go in and just through the normal website, do anything we need. We can do a password. We have their password now. We have their email, their secret, which is usually like if you forget your password, they'll give you a secret or maybe even a secret question. So a lot of really good stuff here. Activation codes, if you want to like one-time change their password, you can instantly change their password and now you completely own their account. They don't have the password, they can't change anything. and admin here, so I could change it to give me admin privileges if I really wanted to. If I didn't want to touch anyone else's account and I wanted to make it subtle and just have my own account. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff here that you obviously can mess around with. So now that we know this table is named users, essentially we can kind of just ditch a lot of this. So if we want to just access any specific information, we can see, what we can do is we can get rid of all of this. And now that we have just from the users table that we were just talking about before, and now that we know that's a table that exists, instead of, let's say, column name, let's do, let's make this password. This one, number 4, or I guess we can do number 3. This one could be login, and when I do this, so you can see, okay, well, I just got all the login information and passwords of every person. So you're probably wondering, wait, no you're not. What's that disgusting character hash that's supposed to be a password? You saw me, I typed in, everyone knows here, it's B and bug, that's the password. That doesn't look like it at all. So essentially, surprisingly, I said this was a terrible web application. It didn't do anything. They did do the bare minimum, and they did actually hash their passwords. So I would recommend that to everyone, to always encrypt your passwords. Thankfully for us, this hash kind of sucks. You can simply just take it and, if I remember this, if we go out of here, let me just bring up a browser for you here. You see that? You can. Now, how do I make Steven?
Yeah.
Is this a new tab? Yeah. What's the? I think it's.
What are you looking at?
What's the decoder? The decoder website.
Cybersecurity.
Because I think it's SHA-1
For what?
for the.
Oh,
hashes.
you want to do hashes?
Yeah.
No.
I also went to Wix.
You want me to do something?
Yeah, no way. So, like I said, this is hashed, right? But thankfully for us, it's really it's copy pasted. So thankfully for us, this is a really insecure hash. It's been broken. Thankfully for us, we have plenty of really secure or much better secured hash systems with Salt and Pepper that you should be using. But this one, it is unprotected. I did give them credit for hashing it, but they didn't really do.
Wait.
Don't do it in here. If you can get it out somehow. I thought we enabled copy paste across.
No, you didn't.
But yeah, feel free to take that. We can take that hash and we can throw it in a site called
CrackStation.
CrackStation. And I think as more of you kind of get into CTFs and see other things, honestly, a lot of people have done the work for you. And at the end of the day, it's more so just knowing the right tool to use, right? So this is one of the tools at our disposal. So if you do, and you can throw this hash into this hash cracker, and I believe it's going to show up, and the password's going to be bugged, because that's what it was. And as simple as that, we have now access to all the activation codes, their email, their login, and we can reset their password, we can give ourselves admin privileges, and we've kind of rooted them. At the end of the day, we've kind of owned them. So yeah, this is kind of it for the demo. Any questions? Because I know I have gone through a lot, and I did show off a lot there. But I hope that was like a good practical demo, kind of showing how, at the bare minimum, if you don't do anything, it can become really easy for me to jump around tables and get any information I want and get access to data I really shouldn't be having.
There's a free try hacking room for SQL injections.
Yeah. All right, so
People just want to do that and then we help.
how do I?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna go back to the. If I can get to it.
Wait, do you need something?
How do I get to the browser?
The browser for what? Outside or inside?
My presentations. Yeah, again, any questions on what we did there? I hope that was a quick little demo.
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh, that's outside. That's why.
It's a computer.
I don't know Mac, man.
It's the same thing.
How do I? No, we're good. Yeah, so, okay. I mean, I hope this answer is pretty self-explanatory. Why is SQL injection a terrible thing to happen? Well, obviously, you leak confidential information, passwords, addresses. On another level, you can do something pretty high level, but it's kind of the most deadly thing you can achieve, called RCE. And does anyone know what RCE is? All good. So RCE, in simple terms, stands for Remote Code Execution. So imagine that I can go on your computer and I can run any code I could want. I could install anything I want. I could gain access. I could give myself a reverse shell. I can gain control of your laptop if I really want. So obviously it's a terrible thing, especially of your database as well. So at the end of the day, though, with this presentation, it's a really easily avoidable problem. Think about if you looked at what I put, how do you think you could stop it? Like, what was the core thing that we really depended on to get the privileges and ability to do what we were doing? There were two sort of core fundamental parts that we utilized.
What's the comment in SQL?
Dash, dash, space, dash. Yeah, so if we just had cleaned our data, so think about it, we had that dash, dash, space, dash at the end, right? That was his SQL comment. So the only reason that we were able to inject what we did is because we were able to completely disregard all the other code that we had there. So simply enough, there's really easy and quick ways. It's just proper parsing of user input. And there's a few other ways to break out of it and think you can be creative. So that's why really at the end of the day, I recommend for no matter what you're writing in, whether it be JavaScript or anything like that, usually mostly probably JavaScript for your online applications, whether it be a website or whatever, just parse it. There's plenty of libraries that I recommend that you can just get out there. They'll do it way better than you think you can, and they're always updated. So it's really a simple problem at the end of the day to just sanitize your data, and you won't fall flat to this. But it's just a really great way to show like a very cool and easy to get into exploitation that I do say it's easy to stop, but you'll still hear it in the news. Someone falls susceptible to it like once a year or something, and it makes the news because really it's just such an easy thing. It makes your company look like a laughing stock, so you really should be ready to fix it and just make sure. And like I said, when we went to the passwords, they did do one good thing, or partially. They did hash and encrypt their passwords. Make sure to do that, except don't use a SHA-1. Do something actually cryptographically sound, which you can go to our next crypto talk, and maybe Stephen will tell you about some good cryptographic systems. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to come after. You can ask me anything. I hope this was good for everyone. We love feedback, and it was a bit shorter, but I hope you enjoyed it, and it was a quick practical demo. If anyone does want to stay, we do recommend Try Hack Me. So Try Hack Me is it's like an online challenge website that we use and we partnered with for some of our past events. So if you go on to Try Hack Me, there's a free SQL injection sort of sandbox that you can try out. So if you want to try that, feel free to go ahead and we can come around and help you with that. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free. Otherwise, good night and thanks for coming.